Hey, Upward families. Pastor Jay here, coming to you live from Harleysville. Um, Looking forward to another great season of Upward Flag Football and Cheerleading. We're so grateful to all of you who have signed up so far. We have a fantastic start to our registration for the fall season. Do want to remind you that tomorrow night, Sunday, July 9th at midnight, is our early bird deadline. So if you want to save a little bit of money on your registration, I encourage you to register before midnight tomorrow night, and we will look forward to being with you this fall. You know, Upward's a little bit of a different league. Those of you who have played and cheered before, you know that. We do things a little bit differently, and one of the things that's a little bit different about us is our schedule. And so I thought it might be a good idea for us to perhaps start a new series of videos like this that's called So here's a look at our schedule for the fall. This has just been finished, and we will be posting a link to our website and sending it to you as well. But it is a tentative schedule. That's important to note. We do play at the school, and we are subject to their athletic schedule. But I think people will tell you that the changes to the schedule are typically few, relatively few over the course of the season, and you can rely on this schedule fairly dependably. It does have our early bird and registration deadlines on here. It also has our evaluations. Those evaluations will be only for new players this year, so if you've never played flag football with Upward, you will want to come to one of those 3 evaluations that are listed. Let's talk about practice times. We have added some practice times this year prior to the season. Coaches have asked for this. They never seem to have enough practice before that first game, and so we wanted to give them a little more practice time before the season starts. I will say that we may have to divide up some of those practice times depending on our registration numbers, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. So let's look at our practice schedule. Once we get into the season, it is 1 practice per week for 1 hour. Now you're saying, okay, it says 6 to 9 p.m. Your team, your child is only going to practice for 1 hour in that 6 to 9 p.m. window. So in other words, our younger players typically practice and play in the earlier part of the time slot. Our older players, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, are typically going to practice and play in the later parts of the time slot. So if your child is in kindergarten or 1st grade, it's quite likely that their practice time is going to be 6 to 7 p.m. for most practices. Now let's look at game days. For example, on Saturday, September 16th, our opening day. That time represents the total amount of turf time that we have reserved to play games on that day. Your games will be 90 minutes long. You should plan on 90 minutes for a game on game day, and those could start at 11 a.m. and go to 12:30, could go from 12:30 to 2 to 3:30, and so on. Our games are 90 minutes. Again, we have reserved extra turf time. We don't think we're going to be playing from 11 a.m. to 9:30 p.m., but it's possible depending on the number of players that register. So we wanted to be safe, err on the safe side, and get some extra turf time there. So your game slot, and again, younger players will be playing at the beginning of those earlier parts of those time slots, and older players will be playing toward the ends of those time slots. We certainly don't want to keep anybody out till 9:30, but again, depending on the number of players that we get this year, that could be necessary, but we sincerely doubt it. Okay, the last thing I want to draw your attention to is the area shaded in yellow at the bottom of the page that says additional practice days if needed. Just as we have secured some additional turf time in case our numbers require us to go later in the day for game days, we have scheduled some additional practice days in case we cannot practice everybody on one night. So these additional practice days are, for most of these weeks, they are additional days of practice. It does not mean you will have a second practice that week. It just means that we may not be able to accommodate every team to practice on the same night. So some teams will practice one of the nights that week, and other teams will practice the other night that week. We haven't worked all that out yet, but for now, I would encourage you to put those additional practice days on your schedule. And as we get closer to the season, we will let you know whether we're going to be needing those additional practice days or not. And you can either leave them on your schedule or take them off. But for now, I would add those additional practice days to your schedule. But you will continue to have just one practice per week once the season starts. So there's a look at our fall schedule. I hope that clears it up just a little bit for you. The key things to remember are one practice, once the season starts, one practice per week, 1 hour. Game days, 90 minutes per game. And again, the younger players are going to play and practice at the beginning of those time slots on the schedule, and the older players will play on the later parts of those time schedules. That's important to remember. It's also important to remember that when we get closer to the season, when we have a handle on how many teams we're going to have, we will issue an exact schedule, a precise schedule that has your exact practice days and your exact game times listed on that schedule. So be patient. That will come as we get closer to the season, but hopefully this master schedule gives you a sense of what your commitment will be and when your commitment will be as we get into the season. As always, I am very, very happy to answer your questions, so please direct them to me at upwardnorthpenn@gmail.com. And we will get back to you just as quickly as we can. Thanks for listening, and again, we will see you at evaluations or when we get started for our first practice. Take care and have a great day.